The biting wind was a physical punch, stealing the last vestiges of warmth from Maya's already chilled bones as she stepped out of the sterile, too bright confines of Street Jude's emergency room. The clock on her phone read 1:17 a.m., a testament to another grueling shift in her nursing externship. Her shoulders sagged under the weight of her backpack, carrying textbooks filled with the theories of care. Theories that often felt brutally distant from the stark realities she witnessed on the floor. All she craved was the familiar scent of her small apartment and the blessed silence of sleep. Her sanctuary, a modest 2012 Honda Civic, sat huddled in the furthest, least lit corner of the hospital's concrete parking garage. It wasn't just a car, it was her triumph. Every dollar saved from waitressing tips, every extra shift at the campus library, had gone into that down payment. It was the first substantial thing she'd ever bought entirely on her own, a gleaming, metallic symbol of her hard-won independence, her lifeline connecting her struggling student life to her ambitious future. Without it, her early morning clinicals and late-night study sessions would be impossible. As she rounded a bulky support pillar, a shadow detached itself from the gloom. Not a person standing, but a crumpled heap on a cold, concrete bench usually reserved for smokers taking clandestine breaks. Her nurse's instincts, honed by months of training, flared instantly. This wasn't someone taking a nap. "Hello?" Maya called out, her voice a hesitant thread in the cavernous space. There was a weak, rattling cough. As she drew closer, the scene sharpened into heartbreaking focus. An elderly man, his face a roadmap of dirt and exhaustion, shivered violently, wrapped in layers of grimy, threadbare coats that did little to ward off the chill. His breathing was shallow and uneven, and a faint, sickly sweet odor hung in the air. Her gaze dropped to his foot, grotesquely swollen, barely contained by the tattered remnants of a sneaker. Filthy rags, once white, now a putrid gray-brown, were loosely tied around it, revealing an oozing, angry wound. He was delirious, muttering incoherently about the war and frozen trenches. Maya's fingers, despite their fatigue, instinctively went to his wrist. His pulse was thready and racing, his skin clammy but burning with fever. This wasn't just homelessness. This was a medical emergency unfolding right outside the very place designed to heal. "Okay, sir, my name is Maya. I'm going to help you," she said, her voice firm despite her rapidly rising concern. "Can you tell me your name?" He blinked slowly, his eyes cloudy. "Samuel, Mr. Harris," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. Gently, Maya helped him to his feet, supporting his surprisingly frail frame. Each step was agony for him, a guttural groan escaping his lips. She guided him, slowly, back towards the glowing emergency room entrance she had only just exited. The contrast between the cold, uncaring garage and the supposed sanctuary of the hospital was stark. Inside, the ER was a low hum of controlled chaos. A bored-looking triage nurse, Brenda, barely looked up from her computer. "Another one?" she sighed, glancing at Mr. Harris with a flicker of disdain that Maya felt like a physical blow. "He has a high fever, signs of infection, and a very bad foot wound." "He's delirious," Maya stated, cutting straight to the clinical facts, hoping to bypass the judgment. Mr. Harris was eventually given a wheelchair, not by Brenda, but by a kind orderly who saw Maya's strained face. After an hour of waiting, they were finally ushered into a small, impersonal exam room. The attending physician, Dr. Evans, swept in a few minutes later, an air of jaded exhaustion clinging to him like a second skin. He was mid-40s, with tired eyes and a perpetually annoyed crease between his brows. He barely made eye contact, scanning Mr. Harris with a practiced, detached gaze. "Samuel Harris, right?" Dr. Evans stated, not asked as he flicked through a digital chart. "Frequent flyer, usually just needs a warm bed for the night." His tone was dismissive, as if Mr. Harris was an inconvenience, a statistic rather than a suffering human being. Maya's jaw tightened. "Doctor, he has signs of a severe infection. His foot island." Dr. Evans cut her off with a raised hand, not even looking at her. "I've seen it before, student. Diabetic foot ulcer. Non-compliant with medication. He'll get an IV dose of antibiotics, we'll dress it, and he's out. But he's delirious. He has a fever. He needs proper care. Possibly admission," Maya insisted, her voice trembling slightly with suppressed anger. She felt the weight of her uniform, the symbol of her profession, and the deep moral conflict it now presented. Dr. Evans finally turned his gaze to her, a cold, patronizing look in his eyes. "Look, student, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you're not the attending physician. We have limited beds, limited resources, and a full waiting room. Mr. Harris has a history of leaving against medical advice, failing to follow up, and using the ER as a shelter. He's not an acute admission risk in the way we define it. He emphasized the last phrase, making it clear that medical definitions often had little to do with human suffering. The doctor's words were a calculated strike, designed to shut her down. He was telling her that her empathy was irrelevant, that the system had already made its judgment. It was the first bitter taste of the rage bait, a direct affront to the very core of what she was training to be. The doctor's dialogue was a textbook example of cold, bureaucratic indifference, seeing a problem to be processed, not a person to be healed. He saw a frequent flyer, not a veteran named Samuel Harris. True to his word, within 3 hours, after a brief IV drip and a perfunctory dressing change on his festering foot, Mr. Harris was deemed stable enough for discharge. Dr.12.com 7. Evans, without another glance, handed Maya 2 prescriptions, a powerful oral antibiotic, Augmentin, and long-acting insulin, Lantus. These are crucial, he said, the irony not lost on Maya given his earlier dismissal. Total cost without insurance will be over $900. Good luck getting him to take them. He then handed her a single, flimsy sheet of paper listing local homeless shelters, all of which Maya knew from experience were chronically full and offered little more than a floor space, certainly no medical oversight. As Mr. Harris, still weak and disoriented, was wheeled back towards the waiting room by an orderly, Maya felt a profound sense of failure, not of her own, but of the system. They had patched him up just enough to push him back out, with the cruel illusion of medication he could never afford. He was being pushed back onto the street, in a worse condition than before, now carrying not just illness, but the burden of unaffordable hope. The rage against the indifferent system had begun to simmer. Maya knew, with a chilling certainty, that she couldn't just walk away. The biting pre-dawn air felt even colder now, not just on Maya's skin, but in her soul. Mr. Harris, slumped weakly in the passenger seat of her Civic, coughed again, a wet, rattling sound that tore at her. The $900 price tag for his prescriptions echoed in her mind, a monstrous figure that might as well have been $1 million. Her entire savings account, painstakingly built from part-time jobs and carefully budgeted student loans, barely scraped past $400. The hospital, the very institution meant to heal, had become a revolving door, pushing a dying man back into the indifferent city. "Okay, Mr. Harris," she murmured, more to herself than to him, as she pulled out of the hospital garage. "We're going to figure this out." Her first stop was a 24-hour pharmacy, brightly lit and clinically sterile. The pharmacist, a young man with tired eyes, confirmed the exorbitant cost with a quick scan of the barcodes. "Yeah, that's about right for uninsured," he said, without a hint of surprise or sympathy. "Especially the Lantus. That stuff's gold." Maya felt a surge of nausea. Gold. A man's life reduced to a precious metal he couldn't possibly mine from the streets. Back in her car, the engine hummed, a small comfort in the vast, uncaring night. Maya pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she scrolled through her contacts. She called her nursing supervisor, Miss Jenkins, a kind but perpetually overwhelmed woman. "Oh, Maya, honey, I'm so sorry." Miss Jenkins' voice crackled with genuine sympathy, but then devolved into familiar platitudes. "It's truly awful, but our hands are tied. Hospital policy, resource allocation. Have you tried calling a shelter? Or one of those charity hotlines?" Maya swallowed the bitter taste of helplessness. "I'm trying all of that, Miss Jenkins. But he needs these meds tonight." "I wish I could help," her supervisor said, the finality in her voice like a slammed door. "But I just can't authorize anything outside of protocol." Protocol, another word that felt like a brick wall against human compassion. She tried the charity hotlines next. Automated messages, endless hold music, recorded voices listing options that felt cruelly distant from the shivering, feverish man beside her. Press 1 for housing assistance. Press 2 for food banks. Press 3 for mental health services. There was no option for urgent life-saving medication for a homeless veteran with no money. "It's okay, miss," Mr. Harris croaked, his voice raspy. "I'm used to it, the cold. It reminds me of..." He drifted off, lost in some distant, icy memory. Maya refused to accept his resignation. She drove to a shelter listed prominently on the hospital's discharge sheet, a grim institutional building with barred windows. The night manager, a hulking man named Earl, squinted at them through a small, reinforced window. "Full up," Been full up for weeks, he grunted, not even bothering to open the door fully. And we ain't got no medical facilities anyway. Best you can do is call 911 if he's dying, but they'll just take him back to Street Jude's, and you already know how that goes. He chuckled, a humorless, knowing sound. The circular futility of it all was suffocating. Maya leaned her head against the steering wheel, a wave of despair washing over her. She was stranded, literally and figuratively, in a city that had no space for the vulnerable, no solutions for the desperate. As if on cue, the harsh beams of a police cruiser's headlights flooded her rearview mirror. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She straightened up, feeling an immediate, irrational sense of guilt. She was doing nothing wrong, only trying to help, yet the presence of authority instantly put her on edge. The cruiser pulled up behind her Civic. Officer Miller, a burly man with a neatly trimmed beard and a perpetually suspicious glint in his eyes, got out. He walked slowly, deliberately, towards her window, his hand resting on his utility belt. Maya rolled down the window, the cold air rushing in. "Evening, ma'am," Officer Miller said, his voice clipped and devoid of warmth. His eyes, however, weren't on her. They were fixed on Mr. Harris, still slumped in the passenger seat. "Everything all right here? You folks look a little out of place for this neighborhood." Maya's explanation tumbled out, a frantic, breathless torrent of words. "Officer, no, everything's not all right. This is Mr. Harris. He's very sick, diabetic foot infection. The hospital just discharged him, they won't admit him, and he needs these expensive medications. And I'm trying to find him a place. But all the shelters are full, and I don't know what to do." Officer Miller held up a hand, cutting her off. He looked from her earnest, tear-filled face to Mr. Harris, then back to her, a sneer beginning to form. "Let me get this straight. You, a young lady, are driving around with this gentleman who's clearly intoxicated or unwell at this hour? And you're telling me you sold your car to pay for his meds? Sounds like a story I've heard before. What's in it for you?" His tone was condescending, implying she was either foolish or, worse, involved in something illicit. The rage bait of the authority figure had begun. He was actively antagonizing her, dismissing her selfless intent as suspicious. "Nothing's in it for me," Maya exclaimed, her voice cracking. "He's sick. He'll die without these. The hospital just dumped him. I just want to help him." Officer Miller sighed, shaking his head. "Ma'am, I understand you think you're doing something good, but this looks an awful lot like loitering. And frankly, this man needs to be moved along. He's a public nuisance if he's here disturbing the peace. Take him to a shelter, like the hospital told you." He completely ignored her previous statement that the shelter was full. His job wasn't to solve problems, it was to enforce rules, even if those rules actively prevented compassion. "But the shelter is full," Maya reiterated, gesturing wildly towards the dark building. "That's not my concern," Officer Miller stated, his voice hardening. "My concern is public order. You can't be parked here all night. I suggest you find somewhere else to take him, or I'll have to ticket you for obstruction." His parting words were a thinly veiled threat, a chilling reminder that the very people sworn to protect and serve could be just another, unyielding wall. He offered no resources, no alternative, only a demand to disappear. Maya felt a hot, frustrated flush creep up her neck. She started her engine, pulling away from the shelter, from Officer Miller's stern, unhelpful gaze. She drove aimlessly for a few minutes, the city lights a blurry, uncaring kaleidoscope outside her window. She felt tears welling up, tears of pure, unadulterated frustration. Every door was closed. Every authority figure was either dismissive or actively antagonistic. She pulled into a deserted gas station lot, the harsh, fluorescent glow of the overhead lights making everything look stark and hopeless. She looked at Mr. Harris. His breathing was growing ragged again, shallow gasps interspersed with weak moans. He was slipping. She looked at her phone, the meager balance of her savings account, a cruel mockery of the 900 needed. Then, her gaze fell upon her car keys, clutched tightly in her hand. Her Honda Civic, her lifeline, the symbol of her independence. A desperate, insane thought flickered into her mind. It was unthinkable, impossible. But what else was left? What other choice did she have? No, not a thought. A conviction. A desperate, burning conviction. Her fingers, now surprisingly steady, typed into her phone's search bar, "We buy any car, 24/7. She found a listing. A predatory, desperate-sounding dealership, open all night, promising cash on the spot. It was a place designed for desperation. And Maya, in that moment, was desperate enough. The decision was painful, immediate, and utterly clear. It was the only option left. Her heart ached, but a fiercer resolve had ignited within her. The dealership was a garish beacon of fluorescent lights and desperation, tucked away in a grimy industrial park. "Cash for cars now," blared a faded sign above the entrance, its letters peeling like a broken promise. Maya pulled her Honda Civic into the lot, the familiar hum of its engine now sounding like a eulogy. Mr. Harris, semi-conscious and shivering, remained in the passenger seat, oblivious to the momentous sacrifice about to take place. A man emerged from the brightly lit office, his smile a practiced predatory curve. He wore a stained shirt and a name tag that read Tony. He barely glanced at Maya, his eyes already appraising her car like a butcher eyeing a slab of meat. "Morning, ma'am. What brings you to us at, 4 in the morning?" Tony asked, his gaze lingering on her nursing scrubs. "I need to sell my car. Now," Maya stated, cutting straight to the point, unwilling to provide any extraneous details that might betray her vulnerability. Tony walked around the Civic, kicking the tires with a performative flourish, peering under the hood with a theatrical grunt. He didn't care about the meticulously kept service records, the oil changes always on time, the new set of tires she'd just bought. He only saw a desperate young woman at an ungodly hour. He returned, a smug expression on his face. "All right, nice little runner you got here. But you know, it's an older model, and it's been a long night. Best I can do, cash on the spot, is $2,000. Maya's stomach dropped. $2,000. It was a paltry sum for a car that, while not new, was reliable and had many miles left. She knew, objectively, it was worth at least double that, even more in this inflated market. But she had no power, no leverage. She was a lamb brought to the slaughter. That's all?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tony shrugged, already turning back towards his office. "Take it or leave it, ma'am. Got other cars coming in, and it is 4 in the morning. The choice wasn't a choice at all. It was an inevitability." Every second that passed, Mr. Harris's condition worsened. $2,000 was far more than the $900 she needed, and the surplus would, for a fleeting moment, feel like a tiny cushion. "I'll take it," she said, her voice hollow. The transaction was swift and impersonal. She signed the papers, her hand shaking. Tony counted out crisp $100 bills, the stack feeling heavy and alien in her grasp. The sting came when she had to hand over her keys. They felt heavy, familiar, the weight of her independence. As they left her hand, a deep ache settled in her chest, a profound sense of loss. She was now truly stranded, with an envelope of cash and a very sick man. "You need a ride, ma'am?" Tony called out, already turning to the next potential seller. "No," Maya replied, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart. She requested a ride-share from her phone, the irony not lost on her. She had sold her car to save a life, and now she was beholden to strangers for transportation. The ride to the 24-hour pharmacy, the same one she had visited earlier, felt like an eternity. The driver, a kind, quiet woman, occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror at Mr. Harris, but said nothing. Maya clutched the envelope of cash, a heavy weight in her lap, a tangible representation of her sacrifice. Inside the pharmacy, the fluorescent lights hummed a desolate tune. The new pharmacist on duty, Brenda, was a woman in her late 50s with a severe, pulled-back ponytail and a pair of reading glasses perched on her nose. Her expression was one of perpetual disapproval, as if the very act of existing was an inconvenience to her. She was the ultimate antagonist of procedure, a gatekeeper of rules rather than a purveyor of health. Maya approached the counter, Mr. Harris leaning heavily on her. "Hi," she said, trying to sound calm, though her heart was pounding. "I was here earlier. I have the prescriptions for Mr. Samuel Harris." She placed the 2 slips of paper on the counter, then the thick envelope of cash beside them. Brenda's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the money, then narrowed. She picked up the prescriptions, her lips pursed. "All right, Samuel Harris. Let's see." She began typing, her fingers stiff and deliberate. "First thing," Brenda declared, her voice flat, "I need Mr. Harris's ID." Maya's heart sank. He doesn't have one. He's homeless. He lost it a long time ago." Brenda paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She gave Maya a look that clearly communicated, "This is already a problem. Ma'am, we need to verify the patient. It's store policy. For controlled substances, especially. This insulin here, it's critical. But he's right here. Maya gestured to Mr. Harris, who blinked slowly, his eyes glazed with fever. He's clearly Samuel Harris, and the hospital discharged him with these. I just left there. Brenda sighed, a long-suffering sound. I understand your urgency, but I can't just take your word for it. Is there a family member? A caseworker? No, there's just me, Maya said, feeling a cold dread creeping in. This was exactly the kind of bureaucratic roadblock she had feared. Well, then I'll need to call the prescribing physician to verify the identity and necessity of these prescriptions, Brenda stated, pulling out a phone book. This is going to take a while. The on-call line at St. Jude's? They're notoriously slow. The next 45 minutes were an agony of being on hold, Brenda occasionally sighing loudly and shooting disapproving glances at Maya and Mr. Harris. The phone line crackled, Muzak played, and Maya felt the precious minutes ticking away, each one a hammer blow against Mr. Harris's already fragile life. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Brenda got through, spoke for a few curt minutes, and hung up. All right, Brenda said, her tone still frigid. They verified it's a legitimate prescription for a patient named Samuel Harris. Though they did sound quite surprised someone was actually picking it up. The barb was subtle, but it landed. Maya tried to smile, a flicker of relief. Great. So we can get the meds? Almost, Brenda replied, picking up a box of insulin. Now, for the Lantus. This is a supply for a month. He'll need needles and a glucometer to test his blood sugar, and test strips. We can't dispense insulin without the accompanying supplies. But I only have enough money for the insulin and the antibiotics. He needs the full course of antibiotics and at least a week's worth of insulin, Maya pleaded. He won't have anywhere to store a month's supply, and the needles and glucometer are expensive. Brenda's eyes hardened. It's protocol, ma'am. If we dispense insulin, we have to ensure proper administration and monitoring. That means the full kit. She added the items to the counter, her fingers tapping away at the register. The total flashed on the screen. 200. Maya stared at the number, then at the envelope of cash. She had $2,000. But if she bought the full month's supply and all the equipment, she would have barely enough money left for food or a place to stay tonight. Her plan, her sacrifice, was being systematically dismantled by bureaucratic rules and an unfeeling gatekeeper. Please, Maya begged, tears pricking her eyes. Just the antibiotics and maybe a week's supply of insulin? He's going to die out there without these. I sold my car to get this money. Brenda's expression didn't waver. I'm sorry, ma'am. Policy is policy. And speaking of policy, Brenda's gaze fell to the thick stack of $100 bills. We have another policy here. She pointed to a small, laminated sign taped to the side of the counter, almost obscured by a stack of flyers. The text, in tiny print, read, For safety and security, this establishment does not accept cash payments over $500. Maya stared, dumbfounded. The words blurred before her eyes. The ultimate, infuriating, illogical barrier. She had the money. She had made the sacrifice. And now, this absurdity. You're telling me, Maya said, her voice rising, shaking with disbelief and a building, white-hot rage, that I just sold my only possession, my car, to get cash so I could pay for this man's life-saving medication, and now you won't take the cash? Because of a policy? Brenda's mouth tightened into a thin line. It's for security, ma'am. We've had issues. I cannot process this payment. You'll need to use a card. I don't have a card with 200 on it. I have cash. I have cash for his life. Maya's voice was a desperate cry, attracting the attention of other late-night shoppers. A few people glanced over, some with mild curiosity, others with annoyance at the disruption. None offered help. Brenda crossed her arms. I'm sorry. I cannot fulfill your request. Policy is policy. She repeated it like a mantra, a shield against all human emotion. Her unfeeling demeanor was the ultimate rage bait, designed to make the viewer despise her rigid adherence to rules over empathy. She was the personification of the system's cruelty. Maya felt hot tears stream down her face, blurring the sterile lights of the pharmacy. She was defeated, utterly, completely defeated. This was a nightmare of bureaucratic cruelty. The system wasn't just indifferent, it was actively hostile, seemingly designed to thwart any act of genuine compassion. Fine, Maya choked out, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She counted out exactly $450 from her stack of cash. Just the Augmentin, and enough insulin for 3 days, and 3 needles. She knew it wasn't enough, not nearly enough to fully treat the infection, but it was all she could do. It was a partial victory that felt like a crushing, soul-destroying defeat. Brenda processed the smaller transaction, her face still impassive. As Maya, trembling with exhaustion and heartbreak, gathered the few vials of insulin and the antibiotics, she caught a glimpse of someone in the back of the line. A teenager, no older than 16, was holding up their phone, discreetly but unmistakably filming the entire agonizing interaction. Maya was too emotionally shattered to care. She just wanted to get Mr. Harris somewhere safe, to give him what little hope she could afford. The cheap motel room smelled faintly of stale cigarettes and desperation. It was a small, grimy box with a sagging bed and a flickering television, but it was warm. It was a shelter, a temporary reprieve from the brutal indifference of the city. Maya helped Mr. Harris onto the bed, his frail body collapsing into the thin mattress with a sigh. "Thank you, miss," he croaked, his voice stronger now that he was out of the cold. He looked up at her, his eyes, though still cloudy, holding a spark of awareness. You're very kind." A fresh wave of emotion washed over Maya. His simple gratitude was a balm to her raw nerves, a confirmation that her sacrifice, her agonizing struggle against the system, wasn't entirely in vain. For the next hour, Maya, drawing on every ounce of her nursing knowledge, set to work. She carefully unwrapped the filthy rags from Mr. Harris's foot, revealing a truly horrific sight. A deep, festering ulcer, angry red and swollen. She used the few antiseptic wipes she'd bought at the pharmacy, gently cleaning the wound, trying to make it as sterile as possible. She then carefully administered the insulin, watching for his reaction. He winced as she dressed the wound, but he didn't complain. "I used to be a medic, you know," he mumbled, a distant look in his eyes. Nam saw worse than this. A painful flicker of a smile touched his lips. It was the first true conversation they'd had, a fragile bridge built over the chasm of his illness and their disparate lives. Maya stayed by his side, monitoring his breathing, making sure he was comfortable. The powerful antibiotics would begin their work, slowly, painstakingly. He drifted off into a restless sleep, his breathing becoming a little more even. Exhaustion finally claimed Maya too. She slumped into the only chair, a torn vinyl armchair by the window, and closed her eyes, sleep overtaking her almost instantly. While Maya slept, oblivious, the world outside was erupting. The teenager who had filmed the pharmacy confrontation, a quick-thinking high schooler named Chloe, had uploaded the video to TikTok. She had captioned it simply, "Pharmacist refuses to sell life-saving meds to vet after this woman sold her car to pay for it. Where is the humanity?" The video had gone viral almost immediately. Chloe had added a short, urgent voiceover, recounting Maya's desperate plea about selling her car. The internet, often a cesspool of negativity, had, for once, turned its collective outrage into a furious, empathetic torrent. Millions of views, hundreds of thousands of shares, comments piling up like digital wildfire. People were furious at the pharmacist, at the hospital, at the police officer, at the sheer dehumanizing bureaucracy of it all. But beneath the rage, there was a wave of overwhelming support and admiration for Maya. A GoFundMe, also started by Chloe, had already surpassed 100 for Mr. Harris and Maya. The knock on the motel room door was tentative at first, then more insistent. Maya startled awake, disoriented, the harsh light of morning streaming through the gaps in the cheap curtains. She blinked, her head aching. Mr. Harris was still asleep, his breathing more regular now. "Coming!" she called out, fumbling with the lock. She peered through the peephole, seeing a man in a delivery uniform standing outside. She opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" The man, a delivery driver for a high-end logistics company, gave her a hesitant smile. "Good morning, ma'am. Package delivery for Maya Sharma?" "Yes, that's me," she said, her brow furrowed in confusion. "A package? Here? If you could just step outside, ma'am." Puzzled, Maya stepped out into the motel's parking lot. And then she saw it. Parked just beyond the delivery truck, sparkling under the morning sun, was a car so luxurious, so utterly out of place in this dingy motel lot, that Maya thought she was still dreaming. It was a brand new, sleek, gleaming silver Genesis Gaiety, its polished chrome catching the light. Its lines were fluid, elegant, the embodiment of understated luxury. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement. Her jaw dropped. The delivery driver gestured to it. "This is for you, ma'am." He handed her a small, elegant envelope. The keys are inside. Maya fumbled open the envelope, her fingers trembling. Inside, nestled amongst the key fob, was a simple, handwritten note. No sender's address, no name. The script was elegant, understated. For the ones who drive humanity forward. We saw you. Maya stared at the note, then at the impossibly beautiful car, then back at the delivery driver who merely shrugged. My orders were just to deliver it. All the paperwork's filed, title, registration, insurance, all prepaid. It's yours. Her mind reeled. It felt like a surreal dream, a cosmic joke. She, who had just sold her precious Honda Civic to save a stranger's life, now stood before a brand new luxury vehicle that cost more than her entire nursing school tuition. The shock was profound, a dizzying mix of disbelief, wonder, and a strange, almost uncomfortable joy. Someone, somewhere, had seen her, had understood, had acted. It was the ultimate unexpected reward, a stark contrast to the dismissive indifference she had faced just hours before. The true climax wasn't just getting the meds, but this astonishing public recognition of her silent struggle. The morning that followed the delivery of the luxury car was a whirlwind that spun Maya's quiet, purposeful life into a public spectacle. The motel room, once a temporary sanctuary, became a makeshift headquarters for a stunned Mr. Harris and a bewildered Maya. Chloe's TikTok video, by the time Maya even realized it existed, had exploded. It wasn't just viral, it was a global phenomenon. Local news vans, then national news crews, descended upon the motel, their cameras flashing, microphones thrusting into her face. Maya, still processing the surreal appearance of the Genesis, found herself suddenly the reluctant face of an infuriated public's compassion. "Miss Sharma, how do you feel about the outpouring of support?" a reporter shouted. "Who do you think sent the car?" another demanded. "What about the pharmacist, Brenda? Do you want to see her fired?" Maya was overwhelmed. Her phone, which she had mostly ignored in her sleep-deprived haze, now buzzed incessantly with notifications. Text messages from stunned classmates, frantic calls from her mother, emails from news producers, and an avalanche of social media alerts. The GoFundMe, by the time she finally checked, had surpassed 300. It wasn't just for Mr. Harris. A significant portion was earmarked for Maya, a testament to the anonymous generosity that had been sparked by her selfless act. The public outcry was so immense that it forced the indifferent systems to react, albeit defensively. Street. Jude's hospital released a carefully worded statement, acknowledging a regrettable lapse in communication regarding patient discharge protocols and announcing that Dr. Evans had been placed on administrative leave pending a full review. The police department issued a similar, bland press release, stating Officer Miller was also on administrative leave while they investigated concerns regarding professional conduct. The pharmacy chain, facing a torrent of negative publicity and calls for boycotts, was the quickest to act. Their corporate spokesperson, a slick, uncomfortable man, appeared on every major news channel, issuing a robotic apology and announcing that Brenda, the pharmacist involved in the incident, has been terminated for violating our customer service policies. Each apology felt hollow, a corporate-written script designed to protect their image rather than genuinely address the systemic failures. It was unsatisfying, a mere slap on the wrist for individuals, while the underlying issues remained unaddressed. The viewer, still seething from the earlier antagonism, sensed the insincerity, the system protecting its own. With the now enormous GoFundMe resources, Maya focused on Mr. Harris. A kind social worker, connected through the viral story, stepped in. Within days, Mr. Harris was admitted to a reputable long-term care facility, not just a shelter, where he received comprehensive medical attention. A pro bono lawyer, moved by his story, began the process of reinstating his long-lost VA benefits, ensuring he would have a stable income. His transformation began, slow and arduous, but his dignity was being meticulously restored. But as rapidly as the good news spread, so did the insidious undercurrent of the internet. The rage bait wasn't just directed at the antagonists anymore. It turned on Maya. "She's a crisis actor!" screamed one commenter on a viral Facebook post. "This whole thing was staged for clout. Who just sells their car like that? Why did she get a luxury car? What about all the other people doing good deeds? This is unfair," wrote another, their bitterness palpable. Anonymous accounts began dissecting her social media, twisting innocent posts into evidence of calculated manipulation. "Look at her Instagram! She's always wanted a fancy car. This was her plan all along. Pictures of her old Honda Civic, once a symbol of her struggle, were now held up as proof of her alleged deception. The comments were vicious, personal, attacking her motives, her integrity, and her character. Maya, never one to seek the spotlight, was ill-prepared for this new wave of antagonism. The public, which had just celebrated her, was now ready to tear her down, fueled by cynicism, envy, and the dark, insatiable appetite for outrage that the internet so readily fed. It was a chilling reminder that even the purest act of kindness could be tainted by the digital mob, highlighting the complex, often toxic nature of viral fame. She had saved a life and received an unimaginable gift, but the price of that gift, it seemed, was an assault on her very essence. The gleaming Genesis, parked awkwardly outside Maya's modest apartment building, became a symbol of her conflicted new reality. It was a magnificent machine, a marvel of engineering, yet it felt alien, a heavy weight of public expectation and unwanted attention. Every time she got in, she felt eyes on her, whether real or imagined. The whispered accusations, the online vitriol, had taken root, making the gift feel less like a blessing and more like a burden. She used the GoFundMe money carefully, responsibly to cover her immediate expenses, including the rideshare costs she now incurred for school and work, and to set aside a significant portion for Mr. Harris's long-term care. The rest, she knew, had to be used for something more than just herself. A month after the story broke, an email arrived in her inbox. It was concise, professional, and personal. The sender's name was Elias Vance. He was a local tech entrepreneur, known for his reclusive nature and immense wealth. He explained in stark, honest terms that he had been the anonymous donor of the Genesis. He wrote, "Years ago, I was where Mr. Harris was. Not physically on the streets, but in a profound state of despair, medically ill, and utterly alone. A stranger, a woman I never saw again, saw me struggling on a park bench and simply helped. No questions, no judgment, just quiet, unwavering kindness. She saved my life. When I saw your story, Maya, I saw her. I saw that pure, unadulterated human compassion that so often gets lost in the noise. The car wasn't a reward. It was a salute, a recognition of the driving force of empathy that truly moves this world forward." Elias Vance explained he had seen the pharmacy video, seen her raw frustration, and had felt an immediate, overwhelming urge to act. He understood the depths of her sacrifice and the system's cruelty because he had lived it. His message was a private vindication, a quiet acknowledgement that cut through all the public noise and made the gift truly meaningful. But even with this understanding, the luxury car felt wrong. It wasn't her. It didn't represent her journey, her values. After much deliberation, Maya made another decision. She sold the Genesis. The process was less predatory this time. The car's provenance, a story of viral generosity, meant she commanded a fair price. With a portion of the funds, Maya bought a new car. Not another luxury sedan, but a practical, reliable, brand-new Honda Civic. It was the same make and model as her first car, a symbolic return to her roots, to the reliable, unpretentious values that defined her. The purchase felt right, grounded. The circularity of it all brought a sense of peace. The car was once again a tool, a means to an end, rather than a statement. The remaining funds, substantial even after the car purchase, became the seed money for her new mission. Maya, having graduated nursing school with honors, realized her experience with Mr. Harris had irrevocably changed her path. She used the money to establish a small, non-profit foundation, the Harris Fund. Its mission was simple yet profound: to provide emergency prescription vouchers, short-term motel stays, and basic medical supplies for individuals discharged from hospitals with nowhere to go and no means to afford their crucial follow-up care. It was a direct response to the systemic failures she had encountered, a bridge over the chasm of indifference. Months later, the public fervor around Maya's story had faded, replaced by the next viral sensation. Life had settled into a new rhythm. Maya, now a registered nurse, worked part-time while dedicating herself to establishing the Harris Fund. One crisp autumn afternoon, Maya drove her new Civic to a quiet, tree-lined street. She parked outside a small, neat apartment building. She walked up the steps, carrying a bag of groceries, and knocked on a door. Mr. Samuel Harris opened it. He was a different man. His face was clean-shaven, his eyes clear and bright. He wore clean clothes, his posture straighter. His diabetic foot, though still bearing scars, was healed. He was no longer muttering about trenches. He was reading the daily newspaper, his mind sharp, his spirit restored. He had regained his VA benefits, his dignity, and a small, quiet space to call his own. "Maya, come in," he exclaimed, a warm smile spreading across his face. He gestured to a comfortable armchair. "I just put on a fresh pot of coffee." They talked for over an hour, not as a savior and a victim, but as friends. They discussed the news, the progress of the Harris Fund, Mr. Harris's rekindled interest in gardening. There was a quiet understanding between them, a bond forged in a moment of crisis and sustained by genuine human connection. As the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows, Maya rose to leave. "I'll stop by next week, Mr. Harris," she said, gathering her bag. "Please do, Maya. You always bring the good with you." Maya smiled, a deep, genuine smile that reached her eyes. She walked out of the apartment, down the steps, and got into her new Honda Civic. The engine hummed to life, a quiet, reassuring sound. She looked out at the city, no longer seeing just indifference, but also the countless, unseen moments of connection, the quiet acts of kindness that, like seeds, could sprout into something truly transformative. The car was once again a tool, but now it served a purpose far greater than her own independence. It was a vehicle for humanity, driving her toward a future where she could continue to fight, gently but fiercely, against the systems she now knew so well, building bridges where walls once stood.